Hello. Alright, today's video is from a book I read called Reality Transurfing. Definitely would recommend this book to everyone. And there's a quote from it. The quote is, "Ever since the mind began thinking in terms of abstract categories, the connection between the heart and mind gradually atrophied." And it's funny. For the mind to think in terms of abstract categories, what's the first thing that comes to mind that could basically that could trigger that process? Why would anyone want to think in the abstract? I'll give you a hint, man. When we're expressing, and here's something that I actually maybe right now I'm kind of like seeing clearer. When I say expression, who are we expressing to, right? The idea is what we're expressing is something that we have rationally processed, probably into oblivion, and it's the nature of the human, what do they call it? The human subject. But human, not human being. What's the difference between a human being and a human? A human being is basically more instinctive, whilst the human is more conscious. It's a double-edged sword because you kind of have to consider the abstract in order for you to realize how kind of like fascinating you are. And the reason I paused at the beginning is the first thing that came to me would be like, why the fuck would we think in terms of the abstract? Well, it's easy. The whole concept of abstract started coming about when human beings started communicating with each other. The origin of it is probably language, right? Because we have to kind of agree that this sound that I'm doing is a letter, and then this sound, if I kind of complete it to something else, my name is not Tariq, it's Tariq, right? But there's no letter ta in the actual English language, so I write it T. So we agreed to certain sounds representing something, which is what I see from my perspective is the initialization of abstraction in our mental process. So this says the minute the mind started thinking in terms of the abstract, the relationship between the connection between the heart and the mind gradually atrophied. I can't even imagine how our mind saw the world before we created all these abstractions. That state of magic when you're seeing a bird fly, or that flower that you planted that suddenly bloomed. Something happens to me when I'm having these conversations. So to going back to the bit earlier, I said when we're expressing, who are we expressing to, right? You can read many stories, you can hear many people talk to you about how when you're using language, basically, your heart wouldn't understand. When you're, let's say, trying to manifest, they say don't use numbers. When you're trying to communicate, use feelings. Limiting people, limiting ourselves to the abstract takes the emotion away from us. In a way, it takes life. away from us or takes us away from life. One thing one guy once told me, he was like, God, only God could judge me. And I remember looking at him and goes like, my guy, God doesn't judge. All he does is love. He will love you exactly how you are, regardless of how you are. So if you think he's judging you, it's because you're judging yourself through him. How can we encapsulate a feeling? You can't encapsulate it with words. You can describe it in words. And that description promotes a feeling inside of you, but it doesn't really express the feeling. It's giving a present to a friend of yours, for example, and watching their eyes kind of like light up. That's a pure form of expression. Because it's not expressing if it likes the present or not to you, it's just expressing that it likes the present. Over 600 videos I've been talking about expression. I've never considered it from this angle. I've never looked at it from the angle of who are we expressing to. I've probably mentioned it, but it hasn't felt this kind of profound. This depth to the world that you find yourself lost in, right? Imagine how your mind and heart were once connected. Because I feel the heart expresses and the mind processes. When we created abstract things or started like becoming more abstract in our processing, right? Thinking in terms of the abstract. What we did was we removed the heart from the equation because we don't need to send, we don't, we could process our thoughts with different layers of abstraction. All that's left is feelings that have nowhere to go. Some might say buried, and that could work. But also, I imagine there are a lot of things in your life that kind of happen and you don't feel anything about them. And it's not because they're buried, or it's because there are multiple layers that you go through. They never get to you. What's the point in speaking in a way that's very aware, very conscious, if your consciousness is not coming from the heart? That's whatever it is I said is what came to my mind. And it's funny because I think we can rationalize things to a point that completely describe how we would have felt. We could process things for us to basically look at how we would have accepted it. And that's probably necessary given that this world, we truly live it around people. We live through this world around people, or we move through this world around. But when it comes to yourself, what are these feelings? See, here today, I did my presentation. I talked about it yesterday. And out of five, I got a two. There are two slides out of the 13 that I didn't do well, but those were kind of like leading slides. From my perspective, the first thing I did was great. I have work that I can do in order to get to three or four or five. But I never took a moment to completely just like absorb the fact that I was kind of disappointed. That's what energy does to you, right? In a state of energy, you take whatever's coming and you keep moving. But in a state of calm, you take whatever is coming and you just let it happen. And then when it dies out on its own, there's no need for movement, right? Because it comes to you. Do we express, when we express, are we expressing for ourselves? Or are we expressing to life? Slash, for me, life, God, the universe, they're separate. But when we're expressing, are we expressing to ourselves? Or are we expressing to whatever we see as the essence of our existence? I love you guys. It's a video.